share with you another example, and this is a bit older, but I still think it's quite relevant. It's the same idea. Let me quickly share this with you. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay.
Our administration is committed to leading with diplomacy, to advance the interests of the United States, and to strengthen the rules-based international order. That system is not an abstraction. It helps countries resolve differences peacefully, coordinate multilateral efforts effectively, and participate in global commerce with the assurance that everyone is following the same rules. The alternative to a rules-based order is a world in which might makes right and winners take all. And that would be a far more violent and unstable world for all of us. Today, we'll have an opportunity to discuss key priorities, both domestic and global, so that China can better understand our administration's intentions and approach. We'll also discuss our deep concerns with actions by China, including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, cyber attacks on the United States, economic coercion toward our allies. Each of these actions threaten the rules-based order that maintains global stability. That's why they're not merely internal matters, and why we feel an obligation to raise these issues here today.
China is firmly opposed to U.S. interference in China's internal affairs. We have expressed our staunch opposition to such interference, and we will take firm actions in response. On human rights, we hope that the United States will do better on human rights. China has made steady progress in human rights, and the fact is that there are many problems within the United States regarding human rights, which is admitted by the U.S. itself as well. The United States has also said that countries can't rely on force in today's world to resolve the challenges we face. And it is a failure to use various means to topple the so-called authoritarian states. And the challenges facing the United States in human rights are deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter. It did not come up only recently.
So again, this is almost a carbon copy of what just happened today. And that is the blatant hypocrisy is just painful. It makes my eyes hurt, man.
You know, like, it's an even better example on exactly that point, the hypocrisy. 2 years ago, I believe it was 2019, beginning of 2019, Marco Rubio and some other, I think it was a senator, wrote an open letter where they said, we are very disturbed about reports that as many as 500,000 Uyghurs in Xinjiang may be imprisoned, which would make this the largest example of an ethnic minority mass incarceration in the world. Meanwhile, something like between 1 and 1.5 million ethnic minorities are imprisoned in the US. So, you know, it's amazing.
Right, but like I said, and I've said that in one of our previous videos, the human rights they think about is human rights for white people. It's not about black people. It's not about Arabs. It's not about Iranians, Persians, Chinese. It's about white people. And they don't realize that a lot of the rest of the world doesn't experience your human rights, Mr. Blinken and Mr. Biden. The rest of the world, especially those with a tanned skin, do not experience your human rights because of the way you treat them. And when I see this Blinken, just like with Biden, and he says, get this, he says, if we don't stick to a rule-based order, we get a world where might is right, okay, where the powerful takes all, where the winner takes all, he says.
What an unusual idea. I don't even know
might is right, the winner takes all. I mean, this is literally, again, almost a deep fake. This is like you're talking about your own country, you hypocrite. And you're saying that to the Chinese. So you're supporting a genocide in Yemen. You're supporting the oppression of Palestinians. You are bombing Syrians. You've destroyed Libya. You've destroyed Iraq. You are currently still in Afghanistan. You're doing covert operations in Africa and Latin America. And you're going to say to China that the way they treat their minorities is something that, and that is something that goes against the rule-based order, where if we don't have that rule-based order, it's a world of might is right, and the powerful will take it all. This is literally stating the world as it is right now. You know what I mean? And then, and one more thing is that when he talks about so many people are incarcerated, you know that the United States has, what was it again?
5% of the world's population.
Well, 5% of the world populations, but 25% of the world's prison population, of which, here we go, of which majority are black and brown people being used for capitalists as slave labor, you know, for like $1 or half a dollar a day. And then you say, again, I told you, right? I told you before, they're so good at projecting their own behavior on others, on their victims.
I don't agree with almost anything in Freudian psychology, but projection is very real.
This is pure projection, you know, like saying that China is doing to Xinjiang what you are doing to black people. You know what I mean? I mean, and what Israel is doing to Palestinians. Okay, maybe in a different way, but you know what I mean?
Or what the Gulf states are doing to Shia Muslims, you know, like all sorts of things. What the wealthy throughout Latin America do to the poor, and the light-skinned in Latin America do to the melanated.
What pretty much the light-skinned people are doing all over the world, where they have the power outside of Europe, whether it's Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, New Zealand, United States, Canada, Australia, I can go on, or South Africa, I can go on and on. Everywhere where you have whites settling in a non-European country, they are oppressing the indigenous people. You know what I mean? And then you blame other groups of people who suffer under your oppression to do exactly the thing that you're doing. Yeah. It's just insane to me.
It's just people with DC-itis, people working in DC in politics. The culture there, the widely shared narratives there are so disconnected from reality and so biased by in-group bias, really. So the way that they understand it is completely different from what you and I have been talking about. They think in terms of, like, you know, they really do believe this claptrap about a liberal rules-based international order. And they really do believe that the US government's role throughout the world has been overwhelmingly positive, because it's attempted to protect people from the horrors of communism being used to describe everything from actual communists to peasants who want land redistribution.
Or anti-imperialism.
Right. So they really do. This is the way that they view the world. So if you were to say what you've just said to them, they would get very upset, because it just completely clashes with their interpretation of everything that the US government has done.
Even though they know that they're killing millions of people in the Middle East, I mean, how can you be so unaware?
Well, I mean, even on that, like, remember in, what was it, the first few years of the second war on Iraq, there was that Lancet study, I think the most prestigious medical journal in the UK, that used epidemiological methods to estimate that about 500,000 people had died due to violence because of the invasion. Right. And you just saw all over the internet at that time, and in print media and TV, all sorts of people all of a sudden became armchair philosophers of science and began to critique the epidemiological study for its methodology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what did they choose as a better estimate? The Iraqi body count, which was a group of people who, this was their methodology. They looked at media reports and added up the number of people described as killed by violence in media reports, added those up and said, this is a much more scientific way of estimation. You know, and that, of course, is ridiculous. We can laugh at how much of a mistake that would be if your goal is truth. But this is what they really believed. They feel bad when they hear the estimate of 500,000 people. They don't like that feeling. They look for some way to get rid of that feeling. They say, oh, IBC, they're estimating only tens of thousands of people.
Again, that motivated ignorance, remember?
Right. So that makes me feel better. And so I'm going to adopt that. And that just happens throughout. So on every step of the way, even if we're talking about peasants in Latin America fighting for land reform, nonetheless, sorry, I don't even know what this is.
Okay.
Hello?
So yeah, so while Peter is gone.
Yes, thank you. You can just leave it downstairs. Thank you.
I'm still baffled by that blatant hypocrisy. It's just amazing to me. So also when you see these capitalists in Latin America, for example, being supported by the United States every time an indigenous person wins, like you just saw in where was it again? Just now, that guy with the with the cowboy hat.
Yeah.
You know, like this simple man, you know, from the rural areas who wants a left-wing government, socialist, who is democratically elected. And of course, every time a left-wing government wins, let me say it even better. Every time an indigenous person wins who wants equal rights for his own community, the United States comes in, okay, bunch of white supremacists, colonialists come in and gonna say to the rest of the world, this is an authoritarian government, these were unfair elections. Then they overthrow it and put a right-wing capitalist, most often white supremacist Europe elite, into government. And again, you see the blaming on the victims of what the United States does, saying that they are authoritarian and they are doing false elections, while the US is overthrowing the government and putting some hardcore capitalist authoritarians in there who use death squads to oppress the indigenous people, and then say, oh, good, we saved the liberal democratic order.
The rules-based liberal international order is safe. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
right.
From their own perspective, they would look at, you know, a movement by peasants for land reform, not as it really is. They would see it as, oh God, this is very dangerous because it sounds somewhat like communism. So they associate it in their mind with, you know, Stalin. And so they think, we have to stop it. And even if we have to use some methods that we think, you know, it hurts our hearts, we'll cry some crocodile tears, but we have to do this because it's for the greater good. The ends justify the means. And so if we have to get in bed with some violent right-wing death squads, then, you know, so be it, because we're preventing a far greater evil from befalling these poor benighted peasants that think they're doing something to help themselves, but would actually be hurting themselves.
I tend to be more of a believer into the nefariousness of people. I think there is really an evil capitalist elite that knows exactly what it's doing, and there's a cabal. I believe it's a cabal of people who are running the show in the background, you know, and people will say, oh, that's conspiracy, and of course that's a way to shut people up. But maybe this is something for a next video. But I saw a very good Al Jazeera piece, I think, about that secretive cabal of UK descendants of colonial families that are still running the show in the Middle East in the background. And then you can say, oh, this is all conspiracy. No, it's not a conspiracy. It's actually happening. You know, there are...
Yeah. I forget who said it, but they put it really well. It was just kind of like, you know, you don't have to imagine like a particular organization with particular members that are getting together in dark cigar smoke-filled rooms.
Which happens though.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where they meet. If you just have a relatively small group of people with a lot of power whose interests align rather closely, but those interests are quite different from the vast majority. And as we know, just from you know, political science studies, the wealthy do exert far more power than the non-wealthy. So,
definitely.
You know, it's really just a matter of semantics, it seems to me. When people put it in the way that you just put it, they would say, oh my God, that sounds like a Illuminati conspiracy theory.
But that's also a way to shut people up.
Yeah,
it's the same as calling anti-Zionism anti-Semitism. It's a way to shut people up. You know, it's the same thing as what you often see when racists say, oh, you're going to pull the race card. You know, it's totally not focusing on the content of the message. It's just It's just refuting the message altogether by using some kind of how can you say that?
Like a smoke screen.
Qualification. Oh, that's a race card. You know, he pulls the race card as if that wins the argument. You know what I mean?
Right. Just like the new term, and it's actually not new. It turns out it came from the IRA UK struggle in the 70s. Somebody wrote a letter to the editor and said, "This is whataboutism." So basically,
yes.
This term is now used to shut down debate, but it's quite funny to look at the origin of it, because basically this guy was a supporter of the UK military, the UK government, against the Irish. And so the Irish, people who supported the IRA, were saying, you know, you're criticizing us for using the only weapons that we can use to try to win liberation for ourselves. But we're basically just pointing out that the violent actions taken by the British government are far worse. And so this guy says, oh, that's whataboutism. It's basically another way for them to eliminate that bad feeling. And that's what it does. It just eliminates the bad feeling and restores equanimity.
Yeah, we could make a whole show around this. You had the same thing with what is it again? Not whataboutism, but oh yeah, Godwin's law. That's a Godwin. I remember that they would always use, you know, like if, for example, if you would compare a state with fascism or with Nazism, I mean, we need to learn from our history. So sure, we can compare. And then they would throw in, oh, that's Godwin's law. That's Godwin. You remember that? Do you remember those days? So
no, they're still with us. I mean, the misuse of the word compare has driven me crazy for the past 2 decades, because there was a German newspaper that pointed out in 2003 that the US government vis-a-vis Iraq was acting like the Nazi regime in its propaganda. Okay. Yeah. And then people said, oh, you can't compare the US with the Nazis. No, I'm sorry. You don't understand the language you're using. The word compare means both to equate, but also to show differences between two things. Hence, you can compare apples and oranges. They share the fact that they're both fruit and they're both sweet. They're different because one is, you know, orange, blah, 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 blah. What they really mean to say is you can't equate the US and the Nazi regime. And sure, fine, but nobody was equating. They were
but if we are going to do the equate game, or if we're going to do the compare game, and we take into account the millions of Middle Easterners, the genocide on the Native Americans, and so on and on and on, and Vietnam and everything, and the nukes on Japan, I'm not going to say that Germany was worse than the United States. I'm also not going to say that the other one is worse than the other one. They're both evil. It's very simple. And it's time that we all speak out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and interestingly there, I think a comparison between the US and Nazi Germany is particularly apt, considering that Hitler looked at the US as an example in 2 senses. One, for its treatment of the natives. You know, the US got more Lebensraum by eliminating, massacring, genociding the
white
natives.
Supremacy. This was just a white supremacist example.
The anti-miscegenation laws, the way that the eugenics movement was developing in the US, Hitler loved those 2 things. So a comparison is actually very revealing.
Exactly. And well, I think we can talk about a lot of things, but I guess you have to go, right?
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Then it was a good, well, relatively quick chat, and I think we still have a lot of things to talk about.
Oh yeah. This could be a running series on this topic.
But we will do that next time. Okay. Thanks for this chat, man, and talk to you soon.
Good to talk to you. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.